Here's my honest, fully comprehensive Bose QuietComfort Ultra versus Apple AirPods Max comparison review and which is best in 2025. So I've personally owned both of these products and have tested them for hundreds of hours between the two. And I'll be comparing them on price, comfort, features, battery life, build quality, noise canceling performance, and sound quality, and tell you which is better at the end of this video. Hey there, OD from recordingnow.com. We're on a mission to create the most comprehensive database of honest, unbiased headphone and wireless earbud reviews, head-to-head comparisons, and overall rankings to help you decide which is the right product for you, make more informed purchase decisions, and get the best value for your money. By the way, did you know you can save up to $100 or more on either of these headphones by shopping for them in renewed, in excellent condition, or used? Links to where you can save money will be in the video description and in a pinned comment below. So if you're new to Recording Now, we're going to look at every single category and give an objective score to each of these headphones so you can compare them against each other and any other headphone on the website to get a sense how everything compares. Then we're going to tally up an overall score at the end of this video and choose a winner. So first, let's start with comfort. The Bose QuietComfort Ultra weighs 133 grams lighter than the Apple AirPods Max. So the AirPods Max is actually the heaviest headphone I've tested in this class at 387 grams, with the QC Ultra weighing 254 grams. It's one of the lighter headphones in this class. Now, the AirPods Max, what Apple does a really good job of is this top mesh design on the suspension headband, and this actually relieves top of head pressure really beautifully. So despite weighing the most in this class, I will say they actually feel lighter than what it says on paper. Where you are going to feel the weight is definitely in the ear cups, which is utilizing that aluminum and that stainless steel. I really feel the pressure here in the clamping force of the AirPods Max and the weight of the ear cups weighing in around my ears in that area. What I do like about both of these headphones is they have a ton of interior space inside of the ear cups, so my ears are pretty free inside of the ear cups, whereas something like the Sony XM5 has super shallow interior here, so my ears actually press fully against this fabric inside of these really shallow ear cups. Another point about the AirPods Max is I'm not really a fan of whatever material this is on the ear pads. It's not your typical leather cushioning, and it just ends up feeling kind of hard and rigid. But it seems like this material might be good for sweat. I have worn these while working out. They're okay, but they feel pretty heavy. Now, moving on to the QC Ultra, honestly, this is one of the most comfortable headphones I have tested in this category. Starting with the plush headband, you can see here this is a super plush material at the top, and I basically feel almost no top of head pressure because it is a fairly wide headband, so it distributes the weight quite nicely, and also the plushness just makes it very supportive. Moving on to the ear pads, I really love these ear pads. They have kind of like a cooling touch feel to it. Kind of feels like the other side of the pillow. And the clamping force on my pair is really minimal. I'm really not feeling it much at all. And again, having all that interior space, and also they are custom molded on the inside to better fit your ears. I really think the QC Ultra is the most comfortable headphone in this class, so I'm giving them a perfect 5 out of 5 for comfort, and the Apple AirPods Max gets a 4 out of 5. So a 4 out of 5, despite the weight and on paper, I think is really impressive. I could still wear the AirPods Max for hours, but that weight and definitely feeling that clamping force back to back with something like the QC Ultra clearly exposes that these cannot be the most comfortable headphone in this class, but it does a good job despite the weight penalty. All right, so moving on to features, build quality, battery life, and noise canceling performance, which we're going to combine into a single score. So first I want to start by talking about the included cases. So Bose does an amazing job with the QuietComfort series by including these small, compact, hard shell cases. The QuietComfort series is able to fold and collapse, which is able to save so much space, and it's clear that Bose designs these with the frequent flyer and the frequent commuter in mind, which I personally really love. You're going to get your charging and stereo cable, which is typical of pretty much every headphone in this class. Now, the AirPods Max, on the other hand, this notorious smart case, which I am not a fan of at all. The fact that these don't collapse and they don't have a hard shell case to enclose the entire headphone and protect it when you're throwing it into a bag. Now, personally, I actually haven't had any problems doing that, but it is something that has always bothered me, and having to use the smart case is not practical on a daily basis to ensure that these enter that low power mode. So definitely a negative for me. Now, when it comes to the features, these are pretty much equal with the modern features. They have multiple microphones for taking calls. They have active noise canceling and transparency modes. They both have a rendition of spatial audio. The Bose Ultra has more customizability in its noise canceling feature and in EQ, which we'll discuss soon. Moving on to build quality. So this is where the AirPods Max can actually start to justify some of its higher price tag. So Apple uses stainless steel and aluminum in the AirPods Max, and it's a more premium looking and feeling headphone. From the moment that you pick it up, you feel the heft and the weight of these headphones, which is not a good thing when they're sitting on your head for hours every single day. But I will say from an objective standpoint that it does add to the premium look and feel of these headphones. And I do think durability wise, I've never had an issue with these hinges, and they do feel really solid when I'm handling them. Now, the QC Ultra, for being a $400 plus retail headphone, it's mostly plastic. So when you feel the headband, when you feel the ear cups and the exterior, it's plastic, which is how they were able to actually shave off all that weight and get down to that figure and be a comfortable headphone. I will say one redeeming quality of the QC Ultra is that they are using metal in the hinges where it counts. And when I'm actually handling these headphones, so when I'm swiveling these ear cups, they actually do feel more solid than the plastic feel and interior suggests. So I actually think that the build quality is fine on the QC Ultra. So moving on to battery life, the Ultra is rated at 24 hours and the AirPods Max is rated at 20 hours on a single charge. Now, in my testing, I think a really important point to make here is that because the AirPods Max doesn't have a clear way to fully turn them off, they basically resort to this low power mode when they're inactive or when you put them into that smart case, which I never want to do. So in my testing, what actually ends up happening is that the AirPods Max will drain battery faster, not because of its battery rating per se, but just because it tends to use more battery on a daily basis by not being able to fully turn off. I will say that Apple has done a lot of firmware updates, and this has improved greatly since these were initially released, where they would just drain overnight for no reason. And maybe if anyone's had similar experiences, they can leave it in the comments. But all these other headphones, you can turn them off completely and just know that you're not wasting any vampire drain from the battery overnight. So what ends up happening is I have to charge the AirPods Max. If I'm using them every single day, I have to charge them multiple times per week, whereas the QC Ultra, I only need to charge once every 1 to 2 weeks. All right, so let's move on to noise canceling performance, which I know a lot of people are interested in. So let me start by saying that I think the Bose QuietComfort Ultra and the Sony XM5 are the leaders in this class of active noise canceling headphones and their noise canceling performance. I think they are the most effective. I think that they're able to drown out that ambient noise the best. So I think that they are currently world class. Now, the AirPods Max, I actually found that the AirPods Max, although it is effective enough to wear on flights, I think it's in the same tier as the Sennheiser Momentum 4, which has good noise canceling in my experience. I've worn these on flights and they're fine if you're watching a movie, listening to music. They do get the job done, but I just think they're a step below the Bose QuietComfort Ultra and the XM5. Now, one reason that I actually think that is because the way that these ear cups are shaped, and they're pretty big, not to mention they're like this rectangular shape. I think that these don't create as good of a seal as something like the traditional oval shape, where it also has like these plush ear pads that are able to mold to your head, whereas these have a very rigid ear pad cushion, and combined with like a rectangular shape which is not form fitting to the ear, I think it tends to have a little bit less of a seal towards the rear behind your ear when you're wearing these on head. Now, the QC Ultra has 11 levels of customization between your active noise canceling and your transparency mode. You cannot turn both of them off, unfortunately, but you can choose many levels in between and set different presets. Now, the AirPods Max has 3 modes: active noise canceling, transparency, and turning it off, which I do think is pretty much all you need and is a little bit simpler. So overall, for features, battery life, noise canceling performance, and build quality, I'm giving the Bose QuietComfort Ultra a perfect 5 out of 5, really carried by that world-class noise canceling performance. And I'm giving the Apple AirPods Max a 4.5 out of 5, and it's just missing out due to being a little bit lesser in the noise canceling. Now let's move on to sound quality. So first I want to make a really important note here about the QuietComfort Ultra. So when I first listened to these stock, I was actually really not impressed. I was underwhelmed because the stock sound is extremely bass heavy that is drowning out the mids and the treble, and it's really just overpowering the rest of the frequency response. That said, I spent some time to use the built-in EQ via the Bose app, and I was able to dial in some settings that was able to make a night and day difference and bring out the full potential of the QuietComfort Ultra. And I was shocked the difference this made. It made them sound like a completely different headphones. So you can find those EQ settings on the website. I am changing them and updating them from time to time, so check the website for the latest settings. But basically the result was a much more balanced, hyper detailed, neutral, bright sound. The bass has been much more controlled, yet still present and impactful, and the treble is intentionally pushed forward to bring out all the beautiful micro detail that these headphones can have. Now for the AirPods Max, these don't have a built-in EQ, but the good news is these actually don't really need it as well. So now let's compare the sound quality with the Bose QuietComfort Ultra with my equalizer settings versus the AirPods Max stock. Now let me start by saying that both of these headphones sound excellent for being wireless, comfy, noise-canceling headphones. This category of headphones has come a really long way from 10 years ago. Now, between these two headphones, one of these headphones actually starts to approach audiophile worthy territory, which is not a term that I throw around loosely, especially knowing this class of headphones and having tested and owned headphones that are actually audiophile. What was hidden underneath that stock tuning of the Bose QuietComfort Ultra was really a headphone that in this class and category versus the AirPods Max, Momentum 4, Sony XM5, I was hearing things I simply wasn't hearing with these other headphones. If you really listen, especially after applying the EQ, the detail, the resolution, and the clarity and the imaging and the soundstage of the QuietComfort Ultra, personally, I think is in a tier above almost versus these other headphones. Now, it's not something that's super obvious, especially if you're a casual listener, but again, after applying that EQ and just listening to the micro detail and the little nuances that you're getting, there's so much more depth to these headphones. They have a more 3D and immersive sound, a bigger soundstage. Again, that separation of the layering, it's beautiful. Now, the AirPods Max, on the other hand, one of the greatest strengths of these headphones is that stock tuning, which is better than any of the headphones in this class, which it needs to be because it doesn't have that built-in EQ that makes it easy to tweak the sound of the AirPods Max. Luckily, that stock tuning is one of the most pleasing and inoffensive jack of all trades. These headphones are focused on that mid-range and having a bit of a warmer sound, and it has a lot of detail in the treble without being too sibilant and too peaky in the problem frequencies. Although I will say these are more sibilant than the Bose QuietComfort Ultra. So what I like about the AirPods Max is out of the box, this is probably the best all-arounder for all genres of music, whereas most of these other headphones, they tend to be one-trick ponies that only focus on the modern genres, whereas something like the AirPods Max can sound excellent whether you're listening to pop, whether you're listening to classical and jazz. It can pretty much do it all right out of the box. You don't even need to tweak any settings. And another advantage of the AirPods Max is I think they have probably the most realistic timbre of vocals and instruments versus most of these other headphones. Like the QC Ultra is more hyper detailed, more spacious, and has more bass. It goes down to a lower bass response in the sub bass. The AirPods Max tends to be more of an upper bass, punchier sound, but not as much sub bass response in the lower frequencies. But there's something really musical about the AirPods Max where it has that more realistic timbre when listening to the instruments and the vocals. But overall, I think that the QC Ultra, if you're looking for a balanced, hyper detailed sound that to me is clearly more audiophile than the headphones in this class, I've really found myself gravitating towards listening to the QC Ultra because it just gives a level of detail that's almost reference-like that these other headphones just don't scratch the same itch. Now, I will say some headphones are more fun to listen to, like the Sennheiser Momentum 4 and the Bose QuietComfort 2023. These have more bass slam for sure, but when it comes to balance and being a little more neutral, I think the QC Ultra stands alone here. So I'm giving the QuietComfort Ultra an 8.9 out of 10 after EQ when it comes to sound quality, which is a really high score for a Bluetooth, comfy, active noise canceling headphone. And I'm giving the AirPods Max an 8.6 out of 10, which is a really respectable score. To be honest, I don't think these headphones need EQ, even if it had the option. Now, moving on to value, no doubt about it, these are two of the most expensive headphones in this class of the popular active noise canceling headphones, with the Apple AirPods Max retailing at that $549 USD and the QuietComfort Ultra at $429 USD retail. Now, looking at the market price of these headphones, you can actually find the QC Ultra for $349 brand new today, whereas the AirPods Max tends to fluctuate between $480 to $500 brand new. Sometimes you can get them for $449. But if we're looking at the market prices today, on average, the AirPods Max is probably at least $100 more expensive than the QC Ultra. So when it comes to value, clearly the AirPods Max loses here. It's hard to justify the full retail price, whereas on the other hand, knowing what I know about the QC Ultra, especially with that sound quality after the EQ, at $429, now that I know the package that you're getting with that comfort, that world-class noise canceling performance, and with that sound quality, I personally would pay the full retail price for the QuietComfort Ultra. I wouldn't pay the $549 with the Apple AirPods Max. But if we're looking at today's market price of $349 for the QC Ultra, I think that at $349, these are worth every single penny. But they're still expensive at that full $429. So I'm giving the QC Ultra a 4 out of 5 when it comes to value, and the AirPods Max gets a 3.5 out of 5. I still think that the AirPods Max does justify some of its price because it is the most premium in terms of the materials and the build quality with all the headphones in this class. I mean, clearly, like when you pick this up and you feel this plastic, and then you pick these up and you feel the stainless steel and the aluminum, these just look and feel like a much more premium headphone, deserving of like a $400 price. You're also getting arguably the best stock sound quality out of the box. If it wasn't for EQ, the AirPods Max would sound better than the QC Ultra. And one more unique selling point is that Apple ecosystem connectivity. So if you're all in on the Apple ecosystem, or you just have a lot of Apple devices, using AirPods in general, whether it's the AirPods Max, AirPods Pro 2, or Beats Studio Pro, is really a different level of seamlessness and connectivity that is just easier and less of a hassle than using non-Apple products. So tallying up the overall scores, today the Bose QuietComfort Ultra receives a 9.2 out of 10, which is one of the highest scores we've ever given out on the website. The AirPods Max, on the other hand, scores an 8.2 out of 10. So the QC Ultra wins today by a large margin. Overall, you're getting more headphone for the money, even at that full retail price. Again, I would personally pay $429 for the QC Ultra after having tested all of these other headphones. I just think that these are the ones to beat right now because it has world-class noise canceling, all-day comfort, superior sound quality after the EQ. But the AirPods Max, it still has some justification, that build quality, the materials, the look, the Apple ecosystem, and having the better stock sound actually versus the QC Ultra. A lot of people buy the AirPods Max and are completely in love with them, so they're still worth it to a lot of people. But testing these back to back, clearly feeling the weight of these headphones and the better comfort of the Ultra, for me, I would always choose the Ultra over the AirPods Max 10 out of 10 times pretty much. So if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment below. If you have any questions about either of these headphones or any of the headphones on the website and need help deciding, leave in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Again, we have links to where you can save up to $100 or more in the video description and in the pinned comment below. For example, these AirPods Max can be around $380 renewed to help make them a better value. And if you love listening to music and audio as much as we do, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, because we're going to be cranking out a ton of new content this year. If there's any models or comparisons that we haven't covered that you're curious about, also leave in the comments below. Make sure you visit recordingnow.com or Google Recording Now to see the rest of our overall rankings, our reviews, our head-to-head comparisons, and more. Thanks for watching and happy listening.